In the vast universe of digital entertainment, games are born, flourish, and sometimes fade away, leaving behind dedicated communities clinging to the memories. The moment a game's creators decide to step back, leaving their creation to fend for itself, it's often seen as the beginning of the end. Whether through an official announcement or a quiet withdrawal of updates, these once thriving virtual worlds gradually become echoes of their former selves. But what happens to the players who remain? Today, we'll delve into 5 games of varying scales and legacies, abandoned by their developers, yet kept alive by passionate players who refuse to let go. The Twilight of Blockland, a sandbox from a bygone era. The early 2000s were a golden age for sandbox games. Titles like Grand Theft Auto and The Sims were redefining the boundaries of open-world gameplay. Among them was a lesser-known gem, Blockland, which emerged in 2004 as a free online game. Created by Eric Hartman, known by the pseudonym Bad Spot, Blockland quickly became a playground for creativity, despite its lack of official affiliation with LEGO, though there were talks that hinted at such a possibility. Despite its humble beginnings, Blockland found an unexpected surge in popularity following a showcase on a TV show called The Screensavers in 2005. The exposure resulted in a flood of new players, propelling the game's development forward at an accelerated pace. However, as the game evolved into a paid product, interest waned, and by 2015, updates had all but ceased. Fast forward to 2024, nearly 2 decades since its inception, and the game struggles to attract more than a handful of players at any given time. Despite the dwindling player base and lack of updates, the Blockland community remains surprisingly resilient. Events like Farming Mode, where players gather to harvest crops and build their empires, still draw crowds, albeit small ones. This annual return to the game mirrors the way many revisit Minecraft for a brief period each year before moving on again. Yet the future of Blockland remains uncertain. The developer, Bad Spot, has largely moved on, and while the game still generates some revenue, it's clear that the days of active development are over. The master server, rumored to be hosted on a computer in Bad Spot's garage, could be shut down at any time, effectively ending the game's long run. Section 2, The Eternal Battlefield, a classic, stands the test of time. Of all the games we're exploring today, Battlefield 1 is by far the least abandoned. Released in 2016, it's still played by thousands and technically supported by its developer, DICE. However, the last major content update was in 2018, and since then, the game has mostly been sustained by its community rather than new developments. Despite the lack of updates, Battlefield 1 remains a visual and gameplay masterpiece. The game's atmosphere is unparalleled, with environments that still leave players in awe nearly a decade after its release. Whether it's the rugged mountains of Monte Grappa or the war-torn fields of the Western Front, the game's settings are as immersive as ever. The Battlefield series has always been known for its large-scale battles and destructible environments, and Battlefield 1 is no exception. The game's mechanics, combined with its stunning visuals, create an experience that is both intense and deeply satisfying. Yet even in such a well-crafted game, the lack of developer support has left a noticeable void. While the servers are still populated and the game is frequently on sale, there's a sense that the glory days of Battlefield 1 are behind us. One of the most striking aspects of playing Battlefield 1 today is the contrast between its vibrant community and the absence of developer interaction. In-game communication is minimal, with players mostly sticking to text chat, and the rare voice chat interactions are often brief and impersonal. This lack of connection among players mirrors the game's status, still alive, but slowly drifting away from the spotlight. Section 3, Resistance and Liberation, a mod that refuses to die. In the depths of the internet lies a game that many have never heard of, yet it has managed to survive against all odds. Resistance and Liberation, a mod for the Source engine, was first released in 2009 on the website ModDB. With no updates for over 13 years, one might assume the game was long forgotten. However, a small but dedicated community still gathers every Saturday for an event they call Realism. The game's mechanics, though dated, provided a level of immersion that few modern games could match. The old Source engine maps, with their gritty textures and detailed environments, added to the authenticity of the experience, while Resistance and Liberation has remained largely unchanged for over a decade. There is hope on the horizon. A remake of the game using Unreal Engine 4, titled World War II Online: Choke Point, has been in development since 2017. Though progress has been slow, the prospect of a new and improved version of the game has reignited interest among the community. Section 4. Interstellar Marines, a Dream, Deferred. Few games have a history as tumultuous as Interstellar Marines. Originally conceived as a groundbreaking sci-fi tactical shooter, the game's development has been plagued by financial difficulties, failed crowdfunding campaigns, and a series of setbacks that have left its future in limbo. The story of Interstellar Marines began in 2006, when its developers showcased an early demo that generated significant buzz. Investors were intrigued, but the financial crisis of 2008 caused many to withdraw their support. Despite these challenges, the developers pushed forward, launching a Kickstarter campaign in 2012. Unfortunately, the campaign fell short of its goal, and the game's release in 2013 was a bittersweet moment for the team. Though the game was initially well-received, with players praising its unique blend of tactical gameplay and atmospheric environments, the momentum quickly waned. By 2019, updates had ceased, and the game's player base had dwindled. Today, Interstellar Marines is a shadow of its former self. The servers are still online, and a small group of loyal players continues to explore the game's universe. As we've seen, the fate of a game doesn't necessarily end when the developers stop supporting it. For many games, it's the community that keeps the lights on, preserving these digital worlds for future generations. Whether through modding, fan-made content, or simply continuing to play, these dedicated players ensure that their favorite games don't disappear into the void. But what drives these communities to stick with a game long after most have moved on? Is it nostalgia, a sense of belonging, or something deeper? Perhaps it's the recognition that these games, though abandoned, still have something unique to offer. Ojue Interstellar Marines continued to have a passionate community despite the setbacks it faced. The game's unique blend of tactical shooter elements with a sci-fi twist was enough to keep a dedicated player base engaged. However, the game's development woes were far from over. By 2019, the updates slowed to a crawl, and eventually they stopped altogether. The community, once buzzing with anticipation for the next big update, was left in limbo. The developers, Zero Point Software, went silent, and it became clear that the game had been effectively abandoned. But, like many other abandoned games, Interstellar Marines refused to die. The game's community took matters into their own hands. They began organizing community events, creating their own content, and even setting up unofficial servers to keep the game alive. Forums and Discord channels dedicated to Interstellar Marines remained active, with players sharing tips, tricks, and stories from their time in the game. One of the most significant efforts by the community was the creation of custom mods and maps. These fan-made additions breathed new life into the game, giving players new challenges and experiences to explore. Despite the lack of official updates, the game continued to evolve thanks to the dedication of its community. One such mod, created by a group of players who called themselves the I Am Modding Collective, added an entirely new campaign to the game. This campaign, titled Operation Phoenix, was set in a distant future where humanity had finally achieved interstellar travel. The story followed a group of elite soldiers tasked with exploring a mysterious alien world. The mod was a hit within the community, and it helped to reignite interest in the game. Meanwhile, on the PvP front, a group of veteran players organized regular tournaments, pitting the best players against each other in intense tactical battles. These tournaments became a highlight for the community, drawing in both old and new players. The excitement around these events kept the competitive scene alive and well. Despite these efforts, there was always a sense of uncertainty hanging over the game. The servers could go down at any moment, and without official support, there was no guarantee that they would come back online. Yet the community persisted, driven by their love for the game and the bonds they had formed with each other. In 2022, a glimmer of hope appeared on the horizon. Rumors began to circulate that Zero Point Software was planning a comeback. The rumors were fueled by a series of cryptic messages posted on the developer's long-dormant social media accounts. These messages hinted at a possible relaunch of Interstellar Marines with new content and updates. The community was cautiously optimistic. They had been burned before, but the prospect of seeing their beloved game revived was too enticing to ignore. Players began to speculate about what the new updates might include. Would there be new weapons, new maps, or even a continuation of the campaign that had been left unfinished for so long? In early 2023, Zero Point Software finally broke their silence. In a lengthy blog post, the developers explained the challenges they had faced over the years and acknowledged the dedication of the community in keeping the game alive. They announced that they were indeed working on a major update for Interstellar Marines, which would include not only new content, but also significant improvements to the game's engine and graphics. The announcement was met with an outpouring of support from the community. Players who had drifted away from the game began to return, eager to see what the future held for Interstellar Marines. The developers promised regular updates and open communication with the community, something that had been sorely lacking in the past. As the year went on, the updates began to roll out. The first major update, released in the summer of 2023, introduced a new map set on a derelict space station orbiting a distant planet. The map was filled with narrow corridors and dark corners, perfect for the game's intense tactical gameplay. Along with the new map, the update also brought several quality-of-life improvements, such as better matchmaking and more robust server support. The community responded enthusiastically. Player numbers surged, and the game once again became a staple in the online tactical shooter genre. The developers continued to release regular updates, adding new content and refining the game's mechanics. Interstellar Marines was no longer the abandoned project it once was. It had been reborn. By the end of 2024, Interstellar Marines had regained much of its former glory. I discovered another abandoned game that piqued my interest. It's a pretty niche Quake mod called Smoking Guns. After digging around, I found out that this game hasn't had much attention since its last update, version 1.1, released back in 2014. What's even more interesting is that Smoking Guns is a descendant of an older game from 2006, Western Quake 3. Some community members took up the mantle, rebranded it as Smoking Guns, and kept it alive for a while. One of the original developers, Tequila, was heavily involved in this transition and still hosts the remaining servers today, out of his own pocket no less. But when I checked them out, they were all empty, save for a few bots. Imagine logging into a game where you never see anyone, only to find 20 people online. If you ever want to join these events where we breathe life into these forgotten games, hop into my Discord using the link in the description. These games might no longer be developed, but they live on through the communities that still care about them.